The mop slipped from his hands and clattered across the polished marble floor just as she stepped out of the elevator. For a split second, their eyes locked. His face drained of color, her breath caught. What she was about to witness would change both of their lives. But in that moment, neither of them knew how or why. If stories about unexpected kindness and quiet heroes move you the way they move us, take a second to subscribe to Kindness Tales, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today, and let us know your thoughts in the comments as the story unfolds. She hadn't planned on being there that late. The building was nearly empty, lights dimmed to half power, the usual hum of activity replaced by a deep, echoing quiet. As the owner of the company, she rarely walked the halls after dark anymore. Meetings, flights, decisions worth millions filled her days. But that evening, something had pulled her back. Maybe it was the restless feeling she couldn't shake, or the memory of the early days when she knew every employee by face, not just by payroll number. The janitor was supposed to be done for the night. She knew the schedule by heart. Yet there he was, standing frozen near the reception desk, his cleaning cart slightly tipped, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear mixed with embarrassment. He was younger than she expected, early 30s maybe, with tired eyes and hands roughened by work. A photo of a little girl peeked out from his wallet as he bent to pick it up, clearly dropped in his panic. She noticed the way he instinctively stepped back, as if bracing for a reprimand. She'd seen that posture before, in people who lived one mistake away from disaster. She asked him calmly why he was still there so late, her voice softer than her reputation suggested. He swallowed, glanced toward the hallway that led to the offices, and said he just needed a few more minutes. That should have been the end of it. She could have nodded and gone on her way. But something tugged at her attention. Maybe it was the way his eyes flicked again toward that hallway, or how his shoulders sagged with exhaustion rather than guilt. She followed her instinct and asked what he was working on. He hesitated, then said it was nothing important, just something he needed to finish before leaving. She surprised them both by offering to walk with him. His face tightened, and for a moment it looked like he might refuse. Then he sighed, the fight leaving his body, and led the way. As they walked, she learned his name was Daniel, and that he worked nights so he could be home during the day. He didn't volunteer more, but she didn't push. They stopped outside a small, unused conference room at the end of the hall. The door was cracked open, a faint glow spilling into the corridor. Inside, the sight made her pause. Several old laptops were spread across the table. Some open, some partially disassembled. Stacks of printed worksheets lay neatly organized, and on the whiteboard were handwritten notes explaining basic math problems in careful, patient lettering. It didn't look like company business. It looked like a classroom improvised out of leftovers. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck and finally explained. He was a single dad. His daughter was 8, bright, curious, and struggling in school after her mother passed away 2 years earlier. He couldn't afford tutoring, so he taught himself at night using free videos and library books. Then other kids in his apartment complex started joining. Their parents worked nights too, or 2 jobs, or didn't speak much English. He didn't charge anything. He just needed a quiet place with a table and power outlets. She listened, her mind racing. Company policy didn't allow employees to use office resources for personal projects. She should have shut it down immediately. But as she looked around, she didn't see abuse. She saw care. He wasn't stealing. He was repairing donated laptops people had thrown away, so kids could learn on something other than a cracked phone screen. She asked why he didn't use a community center. He gave a small, humorless smile and said the nearest one closed before he got off work. This was the only place he could manage without leaving his daughter alone at night. There was something else, too. She sensed it in the way he avoided her eyes, in the way his voice softened when he talked about the kids. She pressed gently, and after a long pause, he admitted that one of the children had been falling behind badly. Teachers suspected a learning disability, but the family had no insurance. So Daniel spent his lunch breaks calling clinics, searching for resources, trying to help however he could. The billionaire stood there, surrounded by the evidence, of a man giving everything he had when he already had so little. She thought of the scholarships her foundation funded, the glossy brochures, the gala dinners. None of that looked like this. None of it smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee, or carried the weight of quiet desperation and stubborn hope. She realized then what she had actually caught him doing. Not misusing company property, but using his own time, his own energy, to patch holes the world had left open. And he was terrified it would cost him his job. She told him to sit. He did, perching on the edge of a chair like he was waiting for a verdict. She asked about his daughter, about her favorite subject, about what made her laugh. As he talked, his shoulders relaxed a little. He pulled out the photo from his wallet and showed it to her, pride shining through the fatigue. She didn't make any promises that night. She simply thanked him for explaining and told him to lock up when he was done. When she left, Daniel wasn't sure whether he'd be fired the next day or not. He barely slept. The following week felt endless. He cleaned floors and emptied trash with a knot in his stomach. Every email notification made his heart race. He started packing up the laptops, preparing to give up the space. He didn't tell the kids yet. He didn't know how. Then an email arrived asking him to come to the main office during his shift. His hands shook as he knocked. She invited him in and asked him to sit again. But this time there was a smile on her face. She told him she had done some thinking about the company, about what success really meant. She explained that when she built the business, she promised herself it would stand for something more than profit. Somewhere along the way, that promise had become abstract, until she walked into that conference room. The company would be launching an after-hours learning program, she said, starting with a pilot right there in the building. Volunteers from staff, refurbished equipment officially donated, partnerships with local schools and clinics, and she wanted him to help lead it on the clock, with a raise that reflected the responsibility. Daniel stared at her, unable to process the words. He tried to protest, to say he wasn't qualified. She stopped him gently and said, qualification wasn't just degrees. It was heart and consistency and showing up when no one was watching. Tears slipped down his face before he could stop them. He apologized, embarrassed. She handed him a tissue and told him there was nothing to apologize for. Word spread quickly. Employees who had never spoken to Daniel before started greeting him by name. Some volunteered to help. Others donated books or time. The kids came, shy at first, then laughing, filling the once quiet halls with life. Daniel's daughter sat at the front, beaming every time her dad explained something on the board. The billionaire didn't just sign checks. She showed up. She listened. She learned names. She watched Daniel teach with patience and humility, never acting like a hero, just a father doing what needed to be done. Months later, when the local news outlet ran a story about the program, they asked her what inspired it. She talked about values, about community, but later, privately, she admitted to Daniel that it was one moment, a mop falling to the floor, a look of fear, and the realization that greatness was already walking her halls unnoticed. The program grew beyond the building, replicated in other offices, then other companies. Daniel kept his night shifts for a while out of habit, until she insisted he didn't need to anymore. His daughter's grades improved. So did his sleep. Years from that night, people would talk about the initiative as a turning point for the company. Stockholders praised it. Awards followed. But the real change was quieter. It was in the confidence of children who felt seen, and in a man who no longer had to choose between survival and kindness. What stayed with her most was the understanding that kindness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like a tired janitor fixing broken laptops after midnight, hoping no one notices. And maybe that's the lesson worth holding on to. You never know when a small, unseen act will ripple outward, touching lives you'll never meet. Kindness doesn't require wealth or power. It starts with noticing, with caring, with doing the right thing, even when it's hard. If this story warmed your heart, share it with someone who believes in quiet goodness. And if you've witnessed or lived a moment of kindness that changed everything, we'd love to hear it in the comments. You'd never know who might need that reminder today.